Hi, and welcome back to this Friday edition of Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. I want to spend a few minutes talking about a column, some of the contents of a column I wrote. You can find it at rightlyconcerned.com. But, you know, every day I will get tweets or see posts on Facebook or see articles or columns advancing the theory that Jesus Christ was the world's first socialist. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I want to take a couple of minutes to talk with you about the simple fact, the obvious fact, that Jesus Christ was a capitalist to the core. Jesus Christ was a capitalist to his core. Jesus Christ was absolutely opposed to the involuntary redistribution of wealth. Now, he was a big-time supporter, as we all are in the conservative movement, and as Christians, a big-time supporter of the voluntary redistribution of wealth. So it's not that we do not want resources to flow from those who have them to those who are in need of them through no fault of their own. We want that. But what Jesus taught is that redistribution of wealth is to be voluntary, be motivated by compassion, by personal generosity, by love. So we're not giving away other people's money. That's how liberals define compassion, giving away other people's money. No, Jesus says it's giving away your own money. All of the commands that Jesus gave about looking out for the poor, not a one of them was given to government. Not one. Every one was given to us as individuals. I want you to look after the poor. I want you to be generous to the poor. I want you to look after feeding the poor and clothing the naked and providing shelter for the homeless. That's your responsibility. It is not government's responsibility. So just remember that next time you get into a discussion about that, not one of the commands that Jesus gave about looking after the poor were given to government. They were given to us as individuals. And a lot of times, liberals will skate on that by transferring that responsibility to the government. And then they can pat themselves on the back that they are so generous because they've taken money at the point of a gun from hardworking Americans, taken it out of their wallets, and then given it to other citizens. That's just legalized theft. Now, I want to take you for a couple of minutes to the parable that Jesus taught about the parable of the talents that's found in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. Now, if you take this parable at face value, Jesus committed a number of grievous and politically wicked sins according to the worldview of progressives, because they want to turn Jesus Christ into the Karl Marx of Christendom, and it cannot be done. Now, in the parable of the talents, Jesus calls his servants together, and he gives one of them 5 talents, gives another one 2, and gives another one 1 talent. Now, that was not an inconsiderable sum of money. In fact, a talent represented about 20 years of wages for the average laborer. Now, just pick a number out of the air. Say $30,000. That'd be, I don't know, what's that, 14 or 15 bucks an hour, $30,000 a year. So let's say that's the average wage for a laborer. I'm not making any kind of political statement. That's just a figure for the purpose of discussion. So 20 times 30,000, that's 600 grand. So the first guy was being given the equivalent of $3 million by the master in this story. So in other words, the hero of this story is a rich dude. The hero of this story is a member of the 0.1%. He's got something like what? Let's see, $3 million to the first guy, $1 million, 2, 4, 2. He's got about almost $5 million that he's investing here. So this guy is clearly a member of the 1% or the 0.1%. So there you go. Hero of Jesus' story, a rich guy that is demonized and vilified by the left. Now, notice that when Jesus, this rich businessman, the hero of the story, he calls his servants together, we're told that by Jesus that he entrusted to them his property. Now, here's what I want you to catch. Whose property was it? It was his property. So he owned the means of production. The means of production did not belong to the village. They did not belong to the government. They belonged to the individual. It was his private property to do with as he chose. So the capital that was used in this economic exchange was entirely in private hands. That's capitalism. That's free enterprise. That is not socialism. So what he did with his own wealth, that was his business. It was nobody else's business but his. It wasn't some government bureaucrat deciding how these resources were to be allocated or how they were to be spent. So, you look at liberals, they would make this guy a criminal. In the eyes of social liberals, this rich businessman is guilty of greed. He's guilty of exploitation. He's committed all kind of grave offenses against the enlightened social order, and yet he is the hero in Jesus' story. Now, notice this. It even gets worse because Jesus says that the businessman distributed the talents to each according to his ability. That is a direct quote from the Word of God, from the lips of Jesus. He handed out his resources to each according to his ability. This is the flat opposite of Marxism. What does Marxism teach? From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Jesus flatly rejects and repudiates Marxism. No, the resources were given to each according to his ability. So Jesus flatly rejects this fundamental tenet of liberalism because according to liberalism, Jesus should have had this guy distribute the resources according to the need of the people in front of him. He shouldn't do it. Instead, this is a meritocracy. Jesus gives more money to people to invest if they have more ability. This was a pure meritocracy. So Jesus turns the whole concept of liberalism entirely upside down on its head. So this business enterprise that Jesus highlights was a meritocracy from start to finish. Responsibility is awarded based on ability, not on some kind of ethnic or economic quota system. Promotion and pay raises. Remember the guy that takes the 5 and gets 5, he gets a bonus. That's all based on meritocracy. It's all based on achievement. And the man with the 5 talents gets 5 more, is given more responsibility and authority. So promotions, advance, raises, all based on ability, all based on achievement. It's completely based on meritocracy. Same thing happened with the servant that turned 2 talents into 2 more. So in other words, Jesus shows zero concern for income inequality. In fact, in his story, the hero actually makes income inequality worse and not better, because the guy at the top went from a portfolio of $3 million to well over $6.6 million, because remember, he not only had the 5 more that he made, but he got the 1 talent from the guy that squandered it and buried it in the yard. So his portfolio grows from $3 million to $6.6 million. The second guy, his portfolio grew from 1.2 million to 2.4, but the gap between him and the guy at the top now widened up to something like $4 million. And the guy at the bottom, his portfolio went from $600,000 to 0 because what he had was taken away from him. So there's not a hint anywhere in this story of equality of outcome as some kind of operating principle. In fact, it's exactly the reverse. Jesus had no intention, even in a story that came out of his mind, he had no intention of having everybody wind up with the same level of income, the same level of authority, or the same level of responsibility. This businessman believed in equality of opportunity, but not equality of result. So outcome was not going to be dictated by government regulation, but rather determined by individual initiative and skill. Now, accountability in the story, you'll notice, does not rest with some kind of government agency, some kind of regulatory bureau. It remains in private hands. It's the entrepreneur who calls his servants together when he gets back to settle accounts. That's a quote. He settled accounts. He was the one that was holding them accountable for what was done in the business world. So Jesus would agree with the founders. Remember, the founders said one of our unalienable rights is the right to the pursuit of happiness. Note that nowhere did the founders say that anybody has a guarantee to achieve it or to possess it or to catch it. You have the right to pursue happiness free from government regulation and government interference. The right is not to the possession of happiness. It is a right to the pursuit of happiness. So this promise of America is the promise of the freedom to chase your dreams with no guarantee that you will catch them. That's up to you. Catching your dreams, that's up to you with God's help. This is exactly the point of view that Jesus had. So government is there, according to the founders as well as the New Testament. Government's there to create a stable and just society in which each of us, with minimal bureaucratic interference, can pursue happiness based on ability, hard work, good judgment, perseverance, education, training, and ambition, all of which are going to vary significantly from one individual to the next. Now, in Jesus' story, when he gets back, one of the servants was lazy, and he called him not only slothful, but also wicked. That's a pretty strong term. So he didn't get food stamps. He didn't get unemployment benefits. Rather than taking money from the productive workers and giving it out of phony compassion to this man in the form of welfare, he took it away from the indolent worker and gave it to the most productive member of his team. So the businessman in Jesus' story had no intention of rewarding or subsidizing irresponsibility. The lazy servant had no right to anything he wasn't willing to work for. So again, Jesus taught that the redistribution of wealth, we are to do it, but it's to be voluntary and not at the hands of government. So let's sum up. In this story, capital is in private hands. The owner of the capital is free to invest it as he chooses, to entrust his private resources to anybody he wishes. Economic gain comes through investment, risk-taking, and smart choices. The enterprise is based on ability. There is no quota system of any kind. Achievement rather than mere effort is rewarded. Accountability rests in the hands of private enterprise rather than in the hands of government. Laziness is punished and not rewarded. Resources are not involuntarily transferred from the producers to the non-producers. Jesus was a capitalist to his core. He had capitalism in his DNA. Don't forget to bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap. Never forget, with God's help, we're fighting a winnable war. God bless you. See you on Monday.
The views